Your Honor, my name is Ann Davies. I will be presenting the opening statement for the prosecution of Mercutio, a kinsman to the Prince and Romeo Montague's close friend. This case is about the causation of Romeo and Juliet's calamity, leading to their eventual death. We will first call up the wise Benvolio to witness the curse hasty Tybalt has set upon the Montague and Capulet families, and Mercutio's initiation of the fight that got Romeo banished from Verona. Then, we shall call forth the exalted Prince Aeschylus. He will witness the banishment of Romeo from Verona and explain the ruling that resulted in the banishment. Lastly, we will call up young Romeo, who found his ultimate fate at a party he was partially persuaded to go to by Mercutio, and that Mercutio interfered with Romeo's quarrel with Tybalt, which resulted in his own death. We will establish that Mercutio was the main cause of the death of Romeo and Juliet by indirectly introducing Juliet to Romeo, fighting Tybalt, causing Romeo's banishment, and bringing the downfall of the lovers through a curse.
Your Honor, with your permission, we would now like to call Benvolio to the stand. Mr. Benvolio, I would first like to ask you a few questions regarding the fight between Tybalt, Mercutio, and Romeo. Who initiated the fight?
The fight that had happened between Mercutio, Tybalt, and Romeo was initiated by Mercutio alone. Tybalt had previously challenged Romeo to turn and draw due to the appearance he had made at the Capulet party. Although Romeo bade Tybalt bethink how nice the quarrel was, Mercutio still asked for one of Tybalt's 9 lives and demanded that Tybalt pluck his sword out. Mercutio was the one to uprise the duel.
If Mercutio had not fought Tybalt, would there have been any punishment made against Romeo?
There would not have been any punishment placed upon Romeo. Romeo fought as a result of Mercutio's death. Before Mercutio's death, Romeo was able to excuse the apparenting rage of Tybalt, but afterward, his conduct was fire-eyed fury, and he was willing to fight. From this, we can conclude that the cause of Romeo's rage was Mercutio's death. If Mercutio were not to fight Tybalt, his death would have been prevented, and Romeo would not have a reason to fight Tybalt. Mercutio's impulsive actions resulted in Romeo's banishment.
Is it true that Mercutio cursed both the Montagues and the Capulets as he was dying?
Yes, Mercutio had cursed both the Montague and the Capulet families. As Mercutio laid on the ground, achingly dying, he called for a plague of both your houses. This curse evidently changed the fate of the families once again, as Romeo's banishment happened moments later. The curse was fulfilled along with Romeo's and Juliet's death. Mercutio cursed the 2 houses for having a feud because it resulted in his own death.
Thank you. As you all know, Benvolio is a very honest and trustworthy person, so we can see from his statement that the fight between Tybalt, Mercutio, and Romeo was initiated by Mercutio. Romeo decided he would not fight Tybalt, so Mercutio did instead. Mercutio's rash decision resulted in Romeo being banished from Verona. This banishment is what resulted in Juliet's grievance, Friar Lawrence's plan, and the deaths of Romeo and Juliet out of love. Would Romeo have met Juliet if Mercutio hadn't been teasing him?
I strongly believe that he wouldn't have. Romeo and Juliet had first met at the party held at the Capulet estate. Without Mercutio's teasing, Romeo would have stayed in the corner for the rest of the party grieving over Rosalind, and would never have seen Juliet. However, this was not the case because Mercutio kept on provoking Romeo, and it made Romeo feel bad. Mercutio told him to borrow Cupid's wings and soar with them above a common bound. If Mercutio hadn't been so relentless in his teasing, Romeo would have never met Juliet, and neither one of them would have died.
Thank you. We see here from Benvolio's story that Romeo once loved Rosalind. He fell in love with Juliet after being mercilessly teased by Mercutio for love of Rosalind. If not for Mercutio's persistent teasing, Romeo may have never fallen in love with the true love of his life and wouldn't have suffered the same fate as he did. Thank you, Mr. Benvolio. No further questions.
Judge, with your permission, I would like to call Your Highness to the stand. Please reason with us as I ask you a few questions about the law within. First of all, what does the law say about the fighting?
As I have clearly exemplified to the citizens of Verona, I have mercy but murderers, pardoning that those that kill only creates more murderers. Tybalt received his punishment, but through Romeo's crime. Romeo's fault concludes but what the law should end. In addition to Romeo discouraging the initiation of the brawl, Romeo's murder puts Romeo's judgment in a gray area between innocence and death sentence. For these reasons, I have banished Romeo from Verona, instead of sentencing them. I have warned my citizens that if they ever disturb the peace of our streets again, their lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. This regulation only applies to my dear kinsman, Mercutio. He was the one to initiate the brawl that resulted in the 2 deaths. This entire brawl is a chain reaction of Mercutio's initiation of the fight. Romeo got banished because he fought with the motive of avenging Mercutio's death. His continuance of the feud between the Capulets and the Montagues led only to horrible events, such as his own death and the death of Tybalt and Romeo.
Why did you punish Romeo for the fight, even though it was Mercutio and Tybalt who wanted to fight?
Romeo was the only one alive to be punished. Although Mercutio should have been the one to take responsibility, he was dead. Leaving Romeo without harsh punishment would result in many more murders, and killing Romeo would create unhappy citizens and injustice in the law. My only option was to exile Romeo in hence, whether or not he deserved it completely.
Judge, as you can see, Romeo is not to blame in the fight between Romeo and Tybalt Mercutio. Romeo was trying to uphold the peace in the beginning of the conflict and only took action in the end to uphold the law and get revenge for the death of Mercutio, as stated by Your Highness. Mercutio is the one to blame because he initiated the fight with Tybalt. I agree that Tybalt did not want to fight, but he was going nowhere with his intentions because Romeo did not want to engage in the conflict. Mercutio, on the other hand, initiated and then engaged in the fight with Tybalt, causing both of them to die. And an event as tragic as banishment or the death of a friend would obviously lead him to make rash decisions. Romeo is not guilty of his own doom because he was under a lot of stress and he did not commit any crime that the law would have anyway. Romeo should not be punished as he acted on his love. Dear Prince, we are
Your Honor,
satisfied.
we would now like to call Romeo Montague to the stand. I would first like to ask you one question regarding the fight that broke out between Tybalt and your dear friend Mercutio. Who made the first move during the fight?
The fight between Tybalt and Mercutio was untimely, as I had just gotten married not 3 hours before. Tybalt was a hot-headed man who wanted revenge on me for going to the Capulet party. So, when he saw Mercutio and Benvolio, he knew I would be nearby. Tybalt sees me just as I walk around the corner. Romeo, the love I bear thee can afford no better term than this, thou art a villain. For the sake of my dear Juliet, I take this insult without rebuttal, but Mercutio sees this as a sign of weakness. He says, "O calm, dishonorable, vile submission! Alas, staccato carries it away. Mercutio was the one to initiate the fight in order to defend my honor. I am stuck between the two men because I have a relationship with both of them. I tried my best to stop the fight, but scheming Tybalt swung his sword underneath my waving hands and struck Mercutio with a killing blow."
Thank you. It has also come to my attention that Mercutio cursed both yours and Juliet's family. This is true.
Curses can change a person's life from good to bad. I believe in curses just as I do in fate and love. One cannot avoid the truest of these forms, as it is divined by the Father above. Though I stood between Tybalt and Mercutio during their duel, it was not enough to prevent their deaths. Tybalt struck true into Mercutio's side, and Mercutio blames me for it. My only intentions were to keep the peace between my friend and recent relative, and to prevent either of their deaths. A duel out in public was then decided to end with the executions of each of the murderers and starters of the fight. It was then, after Mercutio was stabbed, that he cursed the Capulets and the Montagues, my families. A plague of both your houses, they have made worms meat of me. I have it, and soundly too, your houses. Mercutio cursed my bond with Juliet, thus causing our untimely demise by our own hands. His anger towards me during his last breath hath pierced my heart, and made my nightmares and foreboding thoughts before going to the party come true. For the remainder of my life, I had the worst of luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, we see here that Mercutio made an extremely rash decision in choosing to fight Tybalt, which led to his death. His anger from losing this fight caused him to curse both the Montagues and the Capulets, which helped contribute to their misfortune. Now, Romeo, my last question for you is, how did you meet Juliet?
I met Juliet at a Capulet party. Mercutio knew about my moping and sad demeanor over my love of Rosalind, so when he caught word of the party, he tried to convince me to go. Tut dunce the mouse, the constable's own word. He continued to convince me to go by pressuring me and using tricks of language. After a long spiel about how my foreboding dream meant nothing, I was fully convinced to go to the party. Although Benvolio was first to attempt to persuade me, Mercutio's persuasion set my direction of going to the ball, and inevitably meeting Juliet. If I never stepped a foot at the party, we never would have met and fallen in love.
Thank you. We see from this that without Mercutio, Romeo might never have met Juliet at all. Had the two young lovers never met, they would never have fallen into their tragic demise. No further questions, Your Honor.
Next, I would like to call the defendant to the stand. Mercutio. Mercutio, before we begin, I would like for you to know that you have the right to not testify against yourself, and everything that you say can and will be used against you. So now that we got that out of the way, let's start. Mercutio, first I would like to ask you a question about the interfering with Romeo's love life. Is it true that you were the person that teased Romeo above his love with Rosalind and wanted him to find another person to love?
Yes, I did. At the start, I was only convincing him to borrow Cupid's wings and soar with them above a common bound, but as time went on, I started to tease him because his love was so deep for Rosalind. I couldn't resist. I didn't think much before I acted, nor did I look back at the action and contemplate on its consequences. But now I realize that my actions had an effect on Romeo and may have influenced him in his fate. Romeo committed suicide for the very love I persuaded him to have.
If he had not tried to convince Romeo to dance, wouldn't Romeo have not met Juliet, thus be alive?
The first step in securing Romeo and Juliet's doom was their meeting. Romeo was not feeling like going to the party because he dreamt of some consequence hanging in the stars. I convinced him to have some fun and to enjoy the party by telling him that dreams are nothing but vain fantasy, meaning his prediction was incorrect. Because Romeo listened to my untruth, he attended the party and met his fate.
Judge, as you can see, Mercutio agrees to interfere with Romeo's love life. He admitted to teasing and indirectly introducing him to Juliet. If we have not interfered with his life, then Romeo would have met Juliet and would have been alive. Thus, it is Mercutio's fault for the death of Romeo and Juliet. Mercutio meddled in places where he did not need it to. His peer pressure urged Romeo to find love and ultimately suicide. So, Mercutio must be charged with the murder of Romeo and Juliet. Now I would like to ask Mr. Mercutio about his fight with Tybalt. Why did you fight Tybalt?
Tybalt was insulting Romeo, calling him a villain. I felt compelled to defend Romeo's honor, as Romeo was my friend and Tybalt was my enemy. Fighting Tybalt was a rash decision.
Was it not your fault that Romeo was banished because you chose to fight Tybalt, even though Romeo did not?
I must agree it was. After Tybalt called my friend Romeo a villain and Romeo was not responding, I felt the need to engage in a fight. I knew that Tybalt was ready to fight Romeo, but Romeo didn't want to fight. I impulsively chose to defend Romeo's honor, which ended in my death. Romeo overcame his objection to combat after hearing of my death. I was his motivation, the reason for his actions, and eventually banishment, and it is directly associated with my fight with Tybalt.
Is it true that you cursed Romeo and Juliet?
I cursed both the Capulets and the Montagues, so yes, I remember it like it was yesterday. Romeo jumped in the way, Tybalt stabbed me, and I yelled, "I am hurt! A plague of both your houses, I am sped. Is he gone and hath nothing?"
First, he admitted to fighting Tybalt as many of our witnesses have already stated. And secondly, he admitted to cursing both families. Judge, you can see that Mercutio had caused many conflict with Romeo's life that had led up to Romeo's death. He introduced him to Juliet, like I said before, or caused him to be banished, and to top it all off, he cursed both families.
Your Honor, given the facts and circumstances provided in this debate, the answer is obvious. Mercutio is guilty in leading to Romeo and Juliet's death. We have come to this conclusion after looking at various actions done by Mercutio. These include, but are not limited to, leading to the meeting of Romeo and Juliet, meddling in Romeo's private affairs, and cursing Romeo's and Juliet's families. It can also be argued that the curse Mercutio sent on both families led to the deaths of their offspring, or that Mercutio is responsible for acquainting Romeo and Juliet. Mercutio should take full responsibility for their deaths, as it was he who caused them to meet, securing their ultimate doom. The defendant may argue that it was actually Friar Lawrence's fault for their deaths because he came up with the plan that failed to unite the two lovers, which made the lovers commit suicide. This, however, is not true because if Mercutio had never meddled in Romeo's business by fighting Tybalt, Friar Lawrence would have never had to create the plan. Opposers may also claim that it was Paris's fault because his forced proposal to Juliet in marriage was taken as a threat to her deep love for Romeo, leading to Juliet following Friar Lawrence's plan to escape marriage with Paris. His guilt is easily refuted with the fact that Romeo's banishment, which was caused by Mercutio, was the leading cause of Juliet's grief in the wedding arrangements with Paris. Mercutio's actions that resulted in Romeo's banishment can help to argue any other character as innocent, as those actions were the primary cause of all the following actions by other characters that led to the death of the lovers. Evidently, Mercutio is guilty. That is all, Your Honor.